Hello, Pastelin. You kind of ended your video off with a curse. Unwittingly, at least. You said that you wish I had something more interesting to tell you, and unfortunately, I do. You should have learned that since 2020, living in interesting times is not a good thing, because interesting things are a nightmare to live in. Dealing with things beyond the mundane, the boring, is almost always a sign of being in a catastrophe. I could focus on any aspect of what you said, I could mention any number of news things that have happened recently, but I'm going to focus instead on Russia. Russia and its geopolitical relations with the rest of the world, and specifically, because this relates more so to me, Europe. In February, Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, trying to annex more regions of the country, install a puppet government in Kiev, and so on and so forth. Just pure, awful, brutal, authoritarian power grab. And the good news is the Russian military is aging and has nothing but outdated equipment. The bad news is it's still a fucking war, and war is bad. Like, that's still thousands of dead people because of the lunacy of one authoritarian leader. You mentioned that Belarus had the whole Ryanair hijacking flight incident thing, and Russia banned most flights that avoided Belarus, but they still allowed European planes to fly over Russia to get overflight rights because that brings them in a shit ton of money. And yes, that it seems logical. Like, the way that you view the world at the moment is that Russia is piloted by someone who has a sense of logic. But as we witnessed this year in 2022, that's not the case. Vladimir Putin just fucking upped and he destroyed trade relations with most countries around the world because, sanctions immediately came into force. Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world, beating Iran even, which, Jesus, impressive. Hundreds of Western companies have pulled out of Russia because it's just, why would you want to operate business in that place? And as a result, Russia is renationalizing assets that companies have left behind. They've also encouraged Russian airlines to stop paying their charter fees to charter aircraft services, most of which are based in Ireland, so Ireland is losing a lot of tax income because of that. So Russia is just stealing assets from different countries to fund their invasion of Ukraine because they're defaulting on their debt. They're using a whole shit ton of their foreign currency reserves to pump up the value of the ruble so that they maintain some financial strength. But in the long term, it's going to be catastrophic for them. You could cheer on this. You could say that this is good news because Russia invaded Ukraine and have committed such wild atrocities. But there are a whole crap ton of people in Russia that don't support the war because why would you? The only people who do support the war are like Vladimir Putin and his cronies and those that have been brainwashed by them. It's unethical, it's tragic, it's horrible. But coming back to what I said earlier, this is demonstrated that Russia is not being led by a competent, logical person because the war has caused such a negative side effect to the Russian economy and the quality of life for the people and Vladimir Putin's potential grip on power in the future. By not blocking all European flights from overflight rights in the Russian Federation, we assumed, it was just kind of a pansy move so that they were half-hearted in their actions, not actually causing a kerfuffle. It didn't really have an impact on the major moneymakers for Russia, which is the Europe to Asia market, because that's connecting the largest aircraft market to the largest population market, so obviously there's huge demand for that. Including anyone wanting to travel to like Australia, New Zealand, anywhere down there in Oceania, not just in Asia. And so it was a half-hearted move. It was just saying, you need to fly over Belarus if you want to. Whereas now Russia has separated itself from the world. They are investing more in their aircraft building and research development, that sort of stuff. They're kind of going back to the way that it was in the Soviet Union, where they're just completely different. There's now this kind of Russian internet. There's this Russian air travel thing. Other countries won't fly over Russia and also can't fly over Russia because war. And other countries have banned Russian flights from flying over them. And so the air traffic situation nowadays is very, very similar to the way that it was in the 1980s or 1970s. It's all very scary, and I focus so much on this for obvious reasons. I told you I'd have interesting things to say, but I don't really want to go into too much detail because it's depressing. It's interesting, yeah, but fuck, you were an optimist. You were hoping that, like, in a year's time, Russia would be not so shit, but instead, Vladimir Putin has escalated to the point of war, and unfortunately, that's not even the biggest news story at the moment. Past Alan, I'll see you tomorrow.